We jump into the additional clause addendum. I'm gonna not only welcome Claudia. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Just on a side note question. That
Side note.
side
There's
note.
always a side note.
There's always a side note because we talked about these nasty letters that your buyer can get 12 to 24
Sure.
months in.
Blessing it.
What are your thoughts of I'm representing a buyer and I feel like there's going to be an issue with the exterior paint. Is it allowable for me as a buyer's agent to call up the HOA and say, hey, we're requesting a site inspection?
You can definitely look into it. That is buyer due diligence. So I always will advise that a buyer reach out. They should know what the HOA guidelines are. So they should know that an HOA is going to require repainting of the exterior every 10 years or so, right? So if you go into a property and you already know it's an older property, you can ask those questions. When was the last time the exterior was painted? It's really important. It's awful when a buyer moves into a property and they get an HOA letter the month after move-in.
Yeah.
Oh, now you got to paint. Here's $4,500 expense they didn't plan for. So while inspectors don't touch the stucco to see if the film comes off, if it's all powdery, that's a number one clue that it needs to be repainted. Most of the times it's obvious to the eye.
Mm-hmm.
Again, we're not inspectors. We're not HOA representatives. So I always advise our buyers to do that homework. Again, a lot of what you talked about earlier too with the roofs is disclosure. As the professionals, you are to disclose that. You know that an HOA requires an exterior to be painted. So bring that up. This is part of HOA. When they get that email from title stating, here's the HOA, here's the CCNRs, they should be looking at every line of that. They're going to move in. They're going to have to adhere to those guidelines of the HOA. So why wouldn't they know that information? That's important to know.
Yeah, because I'll sometimes do that. And just I think that we're going to have an issue with the paint. And I want to do this after we've negotiated all the terms. And then have the HOA go out there and if the paint's great, it's great. And not oftentimes, but several times the HOA goes, yeah, this thing needs to be painted. I'm like, all right, well, please issue a letter, and then I'm going to get the seller to pay for a paint job.
Sure. As real estate professionals, guys, so even if you have a buyer that's FHA or VA, and you see that the fascia of the exterior of the home is all scraped and it needs to be repainted, you know that's going to be brought up. Same when you see all the shrubberies. I mean, find out what is going to be required. You should know that. Again, as real estate professionals, we have a duty to do some homework.
Yep.
These are huge purchases and investments and steps in people's lives, and we're there as their counselors. That is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to know this information. So doing your homework, whether you're new, you've been licensed for some odd, how many years, that is your responsibility. When you hold that license is to get that education and to find those answers and to look out for those things.
All right, so I want to jump into the additional clause addendum.
Yes.
I got a message from Dwayne and Kyle last week when Dwayne was on, and Kyle's like, "Hey, we need to talk about the additional clause addendum." Apparently, you guys are getting quite a few phone calls on this document.
You do.
And then I went out. I went on and and downloaded and printed it. I'm like, there's some things on there I don't think I've seen before.
Right. So it's the most needed, underused document we have in our library. Now, you have to remember, AAR puts out documents to help us as agents because things have arisen, things have happened where this is applicable. So it's not like they just pulled it out of the sky and said, oh, let's just throw this in there. No, they're there for a reason. I know some of it's cumbersome. I know some of it's redundant, but it is there for a reason.
Yeah, and if you don't know what it says and don't use it, knowing if you knew what it said, you would have said, "Oh, you know what? I think I need to use that document."
Sure.
So I wanted to start off by talking about the backup contract. What is it? What in here do we need to know? And then I don't like this language, so I have my own language.
Of course you do.
And I'd like to talk about that. So what do we need to know about a backup contract and what mistakes are oftentimes we're making?
Right. So some people will think that they can have this backup contract executed for multiples. No. You have a buyer and a seller, and they are under contract. You come to the table with another client. You're not involved in the first transaction. and your buyer says, I really want this house. Should something happen, I want to execute a backup offer. That is solidifying position number 2. If something happens to buyer number 1, seller sends out a notice because you already execute. So you submit an offer with this form. The seller actually signs your offer and says, yes, you are position number 2, solidified. I don't care how many offers come in, you are executed as number 2.
But my issue is a lot of listing agents don't understand that. And so sometimes buyer 1 falls out, and now the seller has 3 backup. I know it's not permissible, but they do it because they don't realize it. And now, so what I do is I got the language from Dwayne at some point, but it says the exact same thing, but it stipulates that we are in first position.
Correct. So if in your purchase contract, page 1, you incorporate the additional clause addendum with line 11 checked, you are in print, black and white writing, executed as a backup offer. When I deal with other agents, when I used to deal with other agents in transactions, and if I use this, I would make it clear. We are this executed second position, and have them reply to that and confirm to that.
Okay.
Again, it's not our job to educate other agents, but again, if they don't understand it.
Welcome to the real world, Claudia.
Hence why I'm sitting here talking to you. But
Wow.
yes, we all have to get education, right? If you don't know, whose job is it to find out? So I applaud you for putting this on here because a lot of people don't use this properly, right?
Yep.
Right.
Okay, so we're good. Executed backup second position. And when the seller, let's just say their bad day comes, they fall out of escrow, how do they let you know? Well, it's not an email. It's a notice disclosure, an official document stating buyer 1 has canceled, buyer 2 is now in play. Buyer number 2, my buyer, would then go deposit earnest money, and their due diligence starts when they get that notification.
All right. How many of us are just trying to take this, copying and pasting it to page 8 of the real estate purchase contract?
No. No. Why recreate the will? Anytime we add verbiage in our own print, we're taking some liability there. It's already in a form. Use the forms. This form has been so underutilized. It's not even funny. And I'm even guilty of it. Back in the day, I had cash buyers, and they wanted to make it contingent on appraisal. And I'd have to put all the wording in there. Little did I know, because I didn't take the time to look in 2015, that it was in this form. So,
all right. Last thing on backup contracts. So I am representing Todd and Lynn, submit a backup offer. It's accepted. And then Todd and Lynn find another house.
Sure.
But I've got this backup offer executed. Yep. What is the process?
Notice disclosure before that seller puts you in play, you can cancel. A notice disclosure stating buyer hereby cancels the executed contract as backup. Done. And said.
I will tell you this. My favorite form of 2025 is the notice disclosure. I'm using. You don't even want to know how. You don't want to. You don't want to know.
Yeah, this is not a.
All right. So this I found interesting. Signature of absent buyer, spouse, or co-buyer, because we often get this whether it's a listing or a contract and one of the spouses out of the country. How does this fit in, or what is this?
Okay, you mentioned listing, and I'm going to stop you right there. Okay. Number 1. It's been brought up quite a lot, and I never realized how much things are etched in our brains from when we are in the business for a minute. This saying of 1 to list, 2 to sell, don't say it.
I never say
don't.
it. I have a T-shirt. I have a T-shirt. I have a T-shirt, but I don't say it.
You just mentioned listing. When it comes to an absentee principal or party, for a listing, we should have all sellers sign, right?
Right.
We need to have permission. So what if you're showing a property and you don't have the authority to do so? You have a property listed and you don't have both sellers sign.
So this falls under a statute of frauds, ARS 44101. And what it basically says is whichever seller signs it, you're actually legally the listing agent for that particular property, if only one signs it. However, one of the things that you'll learn in sales is you always want to have all of the decision makers in front of you. So from a sales perspective, not a contractual perspective, it makes sense to have everybody there. And then go ahead, Claudia, let's talk about buyers.
Yes, so buyers. So if you have a buyer that comes to the table and one of the buyers is traveling or whatnot, this form will allow you to acknowledge that there is another buyer, there's a co-buyer, and we have 5 days to get their signature. Should that not happen, they would have to then be able to have a disclaimer deed, that whole quitclaim deed. They're going to need to disclaim and take themselves off of the transaction. Yep. So it's a nice placeholder for those 5 days.
Yeah, this is good too, but if you can't perform within 5 days, you can do a and/or nominee, and then establish the nominee as the absent spouse or absent other partner of the property. And then in that particular case, you can establish exactly the timeline in which that needs to take place. But legally, a nominee, if you disclose it in the beginning, just has to show up at the closing.
Yep.
So then my question on here for this one is if my spouse can't sign it until day 5, but I have signed a purchase contract and the seller's accepted it, but we have this additional clause addendum with line 20 checked. Are we officially under escrow and does inspection period start, or am I waiting for the spouse's signature?
No, you are executed. It's not like it's not a, oh, give me 5 more days. No, you are under contract. Your due diligence begins when you're under contract. This is just a placeholder for the signature. So you better be a decision maker if you're that solo buyer, that, the pair, and you don't have the other person's signature.
And if the person who did sign it, Mike, was the person who is the one that has the let's just say it this way. If the one who signs it has the ability to close on it without the other party's signature, you can add the other party during escrow at any time.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I found this one interesting. All right. Corporate relocation approval. I haven't seen this one. When was this stuff added?
There was a lot of corporate relocations back in the day. We're seeing more and more as people get transferred and whatnot. If the corporation comes in, they can purchase the property from the seller, and then they would be the sole decider. They would be the seller, right? But in some cases, the corporate relocation company, if you work for some of these, big companies where they say, we'll take care of your relocation, they may say you remain in ownership as a seller, but we need approval. So there's a contingency. This adds a contingency that the corporation needs to approve that transaction. They can say no. So it's important to know that.
Okay, so then if I'm on the listing side and I get this, what am I doing and what kind of information am I tracking down to? Am I reaching out to the relocation company, or what kind of paperwork am I getting, or am I just hoping and wishing for the best, which I don't like to do?
You don't just hope and wish for the best, guys. So again, do we just do paperwork? No, we have representation. So who do you represent? Number one, identify the relationship. Is your relationship with the corporation who actually owns the property now, or is it with the seller and the seller still retains ownership? You need to make sure you have the proper people that are signing our contracts, because a listing contract is a contract. So make sure that if you're on the listing side, you're talking to the right people. Now, the seller could come to you with all that information. That's a great seller. How many times does the seller have everything that we need? Hopefully more than not, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't, you may need to get involved and contact that relocation company. I would just use a lot of caution because, again, if you're dealing with the seller and the relo company and you're not getting the same information, who's correct? Well, if the relocation company has this contingency where they have the right to approve and deny, and they're the ones that are supposed to sign, you're dealing with that relocation company.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether who's right or not. It's a matter of who signs off on it.
With any contingency, same with the short sale type situation, you have to make sure that everyone is aware that there is a contingency involved. Okay, so that's what this is. It's pointing it out. It's highlighting it. It's bolding it that we have a relocation involved. And MLS has the relocation field. So if it needs to be approved by a relo company, it's going to state that on there.
Yeah, and even if the corporate reload company doesn't own it, they are in relation with the seller, and the seller has signed a contract with the corporate relocation company, which means that if in fact sometimes if the property doesn't sell within X period of days, then the corporation will buy it from the seller, allowing the seller to move to their new location to get to work at that same company's other headquarters. And so that's what you want to know, because it could also mean there is a referral fee you have to pay. And sometimes, whether you're a listing side or a buyer side, and sometimes those can be very, like, almost half of your compensation.
Correct.
All
A
right.
lot of homework.
All right. I know this is always confusing. Non-refundable earnest money. I wanted to talk about it, and and then is there? What I want to get into, is there a difference? Even though my buyer checks this box, signs it, but at the end of the day, they're FHA or VA. Do any of the guidelines with FHA or VA trump this?
Yes.
Okay. All right, moving on. No.
Yes. And again, guys, before you get into these situations, make sure you talk to your lenders. Have this conversation. Hey, my buyer wants to be strong. They want to go, and there's non-refundable. It's not going to be allowed. That it's going to trump it. Just when people talk about, the IRS and anything involved with a government-backed loan, it's not going to work. So I don't care how much the seller wants to take their earnest money or their due it. When it's a government-backed loan like that, it's just not permissible.
This is what listing agents really need to know too, is that the VA, Mike's talking about the VA and FHA mandatory clause. That document isn't given to a seller until after the inspection's been performed. So when you write in a contract, all earnest money shall become non-refundable as of the end of the inspection period or expiration of the inspection period, that's not necessarily true. And so that's when this document came out with this particular clause. Even though it says in here, if it fails to appraise, that does not relieve you can't take away somebody's federal rights in this particular case.
Right.
So that's the importance.
Yeah. If you read that last part of that last sentence.
All right. So, how does the term, earnest money becomes hard and released to the seller immediately upon the inspection period? Because for me, at the end of the day, and I hate to say it, sometimes this language or any type of language we put into the contract, at the end of the day, if there is a earnest money dispute, title company makes the final decision.
Correct.
And I've seen title companies just not give a rat's what about this language, because they'll always err on the side of the buyer, and I don't really see it the other way around too often.
I have.
And so. As a buyer, representing a buyer, I personally would do everything I can to fight and never let earnest money get released prior to close of escrow. If I'm on the selling side, that's a different whole story. So then...
Right. So the earnest money going hard, it's making it non-refundable. So when people say that, they need to understand that there's still not loopholes, but there's still a way out, right? Via the FHA and VA. But having it released, that's taking the skin out of the game. So our sellers and buyers need to be aware that if we're going to agree to have earnest money released early, that has to obviously be sent through title, and that has to be agreed to by all parties. But that removes some of that skin in the game. So again, for a seller, does it benefit? Yeah, if they need it for whatever they need to do. I had one where it was a VA and they needed to treat for termites. Everything else was agreed to on conditions, but of course the appraisal came in and there was a termite inspection done, and it was required to be completed. The seller was in a position where they only had the money to be able to move into another property. So yes, they released the earnest money, and the buyers agreed to do that. Mm-hmm. But did they have to? No. So again,
so then the buyers, he's like, you got to figure out and pay for the termite yourself, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, or
right,
the seller.
Yeah. And if that's the case, yes. But this buyer was already getting a great amount of concessions, and they were extremely happy, and they loved this house. They did not want to start over. Again, sometimes if they can't recreate the transaction, then they might be in their benefit to continue forward. And in this case, it was, because they were getting a great amount of money. And this seller had redone every appliance. So it was like a brand new home for them. So in this scenario, it completely made sense.
Right.
So it doesn't always make sense, and it's not always advisable, but sometimes, yes, it can help move the transaction along and get us to the end game.
All righty. Nick, you got anything to add?
No, I think you guys did a pretty good job. Just make sure you're checking with your broker team every time you have one of these, and not Mike.
Right.
All right. Yeah, fair enough. You hear that, Kyle? Stop calling me. All right. So this is the big one.
Yes.
Because Dwayne touched on it on Monday. And so I think, for my opinion, this was really a huge result of the new buyer broker agreement rules, because now there's this emphasis on our listing contracts of paying unrepresented buyers, and it just seemed to be more of a topic of discussion. So I'm now I represent the seller, and I'm hosting an open house. Mr. and Mrs. Smith walk in, and they want to make an offer. They're unrepresented, and my understanding is then I might check this box and have the seller create the offer.
Correct. So there are two scenarios where this can be used. And in your case, you're holding open house. You don't need any buyer broker agreement because it's a West USA property and it's your listing and they're coming through. You ask the questions. Are you represented? Have you signed a BBA? They don't know what that is. You go over it. Oh, no, we don't need representation. We really love this house. We want to make an offer. Great. If you start talking to that buyer about what they want to offer, how difficult is it for you to not offer advice? This implied agency is huge, guys. Huge. This is the reason this is here. We don't want blurred lines. No blurred lines. So, yes, could people in the past have said, well, Mr. Buyer, tell me all the terms you want. I'll write it up and send it to you. You can sign it and send it back, and then the seller will review it. That is a very, very thin line. It's very difficult not to cross that. One time that buyer feels like you're working for their behalf, you're done.
Yep.
You're done. So to make it clear, we have tons of unrepresented buyer stuff, right? And then we'll cover those. But this here now makes it so that the seller initiates the offer. Buyer may send over their terms via email or in conversation or whatnot, but this is the seller because we represent that seller. So it's coming from the seller's behalf. It's basically in reverse. Buyer has the option to review that offer and say, I accept, I reject, or I counter. But if they counter, we have to start over with a new offer because their counter now changes it. And it's listed all on here. So it's reading it through. I know you're a fan of the Chat GPT. But be
I'm
very,
calling
very
myself
cautious.
a pro.
Be very, very cautious. I did test our agent overlay for ChatGPT, and it did great. It did great with this question. I wanted to see what other agents are looking at when they're coming across this scenario. But to understand it better, yes, it seems very cumbersome. It seems like a lot of work. But again, we are CYA, right? We are covering ourselves. This is a huge problem. For them to have come out with this on this document, it's telling you something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is actually not something new from a perspective of a regular real estate transaction, because we have had unrepresented buyers for as long as I've been doing it, which is more than you want to know.
A long time.
But the thing is this, is that you don't have, even if the seller told you their low offer or any of these kinds of things, when you write this offer from the seller, and I would imagine a majority of the time, Claudia, you're finding out that that the buyers don't have any clue what they want to pay for this property. So, they'll maybe ask a question that will potentially put the licensee in a very, very bad situation. And so as a result, anything that you might say could damage this. It's almost as though the best thing to do is if the seller had Utopia, and Utopia is the list price, you writing an offer with your seller, of course, at list price, without offering any contingencies, without offering any concessions, without offering any appraisal or not appraisal, but home warranty fee, then that would be your seller's best it would be just what the list price is, you know,
Right.
and that's what they would get. That's probably the way you would start. And then you submit it over, and of course, then the buyer has the right to counter back. Well, I don't want that, or I want to pay this, or any of those other kinds of things. But
Right.
again, to your point, you just end up having to write a whole new offer from the seller's perspective. So I guess my point here is most buyers are not going to have any clue what they want to pay for this house. So you're probably just going to write this offer at list price, with the seller, of course, obviously, but at list price with no other monies coming out of the seller's
Right.
pocket whatsoever.
Blank and not blank,
Yeah.
but par, right?
Par. Right.
So the other part where this comes into, and we've all seen it, where a seller comes to you and they say, "Hey, buddy, I have a property I want to sell. I already have a buyer that's lined up. Can you just do the paperwork for me?" What would your answer be, Mike?
I'm afraid to.
No, go. I want you to answer it. I'm here, but I'm here. So let's see what
All
you
right.
got to say.
The question was what? Great. This is.
Hey, you invite me.
What was the question again?
A buddy calls you and says, "I have this property. I want to sell this house. I have a buyer already lined up. I want you to do the paperwork for me."
All right. Well, first of all, I would ask if your buddy has an agent as well. So I need to know whether there's another licensee involved, and then we would have a conversation, a traditional listing conversation. We're going to put together an ER. I'm going to negotiate the amount of bagels I want.
Okay. But Mr. Mike, I'm asking you to just do the paperwork for me.
No,
Can you do that for me?
No.
Perfect.
Why?
Why?
Why? Because it's just not that simple. I have my own set of liabilities, and I represent Dwayne
Ding,
Fouts
ding, ding, represent.
and da 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 da.
Yes, sir.
Here's the thing. Read Article 26 of the Constitution of the State of Arizona.
I'm not going to do it.
It's four sentences.
Okay, maybe.
What it is it gives you the right to practice law by writing any documentation that's incidental to the real estate transfer while you represent one of the parties to the transaction. So you're absolutely right. The first conversation would be that listing contract. And then from that, the answer would be, I could do this, but you're also right in making sure that the other buyer is or isn't really truly represented. And if they're not, and you end up writing it, this is what this document's for.
My main point here is we do not just do paperwork.
Right, can't.
That's not what we
Says
do.
without charge, right? Can't do it.
We have representation. You either represent a seller, a buyer, a landlord, or a tenant in every transaction. I tell everyone in React, coming up this week, you have to define the relationship first. It's the best type of comparison I can come up with.
Yep.
Define the relationship first. We have agency. That's huge. We do not just do paperwork. So anytime someone says, "Oh yeah, I could just do the paperwork for you," no, that's a big red line. No.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Why just, I know we're not supposed to. I'm just curious minds. Like, why, if the buyer in this situation wants to counter this final sales price, why can't I just do a counter offer? I don't understand.
That's representing.
That's representing that buyer. So again, if that buyer tells you their wishes and it's in writing, I understand, and it may sound like it is overkill to have the seller redo the offer, but you have those terms. That is fine. This is again a seller initiated offer.
All right, so here's going to be the big question in all this. So at some point, I have got to determine whether they have spoken to a lender or if they've been pre-qualified with a lender. How do I handle that conversation? And then how do I handle they say, "No, do you have any recommendations?"
Okay, so that unrepresented buyer should be reading those lines of that contract. And line 69 states that a pre-qual, an AAR pre-qual, is going to accompany that offer. So if it's missing, I'm so sorry, your offer was rejected.
But
or
I'm
missing.
creating it, so I'm creating the offer.
But you're not creating the.
You're creating the offer, right? But they need to supply. They need to comply with the contract.
Okay.
So if they need to read over those lines, that's why when buyers say, "Oh, I don't need representation," they need to be sure. You can't cross that line. How easy is it for you to be like, "Oh, you're missing your pre-qual. Oh, I haven't spoken to a lender. Okay, here's some referrals." Are you then implying that you're helping them out? "Oh, you know what? You're going FHA, but you said you're putting so much down. You may want..." No, you cannot get involved.
It's called accidental agency.
Yeah. So okay. So then I just don't. What you're saying is I don't make any recommendations. So could I in the offer originated by the seller say buyer to be pre-qualified with the Frederick team and buyer to use HCP for the home inspection, or am I just going down a slippery slope?
That is a slippery slope. We've seen this a lot in lender-owned properties where they say must use so and so or must qualify, at least do a pre-qual with one company. But again, as an independent seller, you want to be careful. Who are we there to protect? Our seller.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get an offer and it's a seller-initiated offer and you send it out and they don't return a pre-qual, your offer is missing this, and the other thing. That's it.
Okay.
It's not, this is how you get it, or check this or check that. No, it's plain and simple.
All righty, last one of the day. There's plenty more on the additional clause, so part due maybe next month.
Yes.
So unrepresented buyer notice. So I'm assuming this would go with the previous one.
It does. So the unrepresented buyer, there's a lot of things involved here. We have to do a number of things. Number one, your purchase contract, page 1 on Addenda Incorporated should state additional clause, because now we're going to be utilizing this.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different spot than we're used to. It says it on here, unrepresented. And then your purchase contract last page, line 443, I believe it is, should state unrepresented. In the past, people have left it blank or had put none.
Yeah.
We don't want any misconstrued, no ambiguity, verbiage in the contract. So if you state unrepresented, that cannot be changed. Don't put unrepresented and then leave West USA on there. That's a no-no, right? There is truly no representation for the broker on behalf of buyer. Very important,
And
especially now that it has.
still have the unrepresented buyer.
Well, I'm not there yet.
Okay.
Oh, you're going ahead, dude. You want to run.
I get excited.
We're working slowly to it, okay? So that purchase contract, page 1, incorporate it. Page 10, unrepresented. And then also on page 1 of the contract, you're going to include the unrepresented buyer disclosure, because we want to incorporate that. That's a disclosure between buyer and seller to each other. Yes, we are your buyer is unrepresented. Mr. Seller, I acknowledge that. Buyer acknowledges it as well. So it's putting it out there, and both parties consent to that the buyer is unrepresented. On top of the unrepresented buyer disclosure, we then have to create an agency document from me at West USA to Mr. Unrepresented Buyer stating, box 49, I represent the seller only. Again, it may seem redundant, but why do these forms get created? There's been issues.
Well, one is called a real estate agency disclosure and election form, so they're electing now that they understand they're unrepresented. Then this just goes that much further.
Yeah, but that disclosure is, again, from the agent representing the seller to that unrepresented buyer.
So when I'm representing my seller, I mean, I know the answer to the question, but I know where my heart wants to go. Yes, I have one, and I have more than one feeling, Nick. Is I represent I understand the dangers of being an unrepresented buyer. I wouldn't recommend that for anyone. So again, it's my listing, my open house, and I'm going through this process. And how far can I get into, hey, you may want to think about, finding an agent to represent you?
No.
Okay.
You may want to think about. What are you telling them? You're giving them advice. If they come in and say, I don't have representation, okay, you can make an unrepresented buyer offer. We can do an offer initiated by the seller and acknowledge that you're unrepresented, if that's truly where you want to be.
Okay.
In this day and age, they can Google things. They can find out. Everybody knows a realtor. Not that they have to use one. Is it advised to? Yes. Would you go into court without an attorney?
Well, maybe.
Well, I'm asking the wrong person, I guess.
Well, small claims court, probably.
Which has increased. But you want to...
Traffic school all day long.
They know you by name, right? Here comes Mike. But you guys want to be really, really careful. Again, I keep saying it and I keep harping on it. These forms are out there not to harm you, not to make your job more difficult, but to protect you as real estate professionals. We're always going to err on the side of caution.
Mm-hmm.
Again, these are big decisions, people's blood, sweat, equity. I mean, it's a big, big purchase for people.
And it's not, you're not stupid. You're not ignorant. You're not you shouldn't have known better. All these things, pick up the phone and call the broker team and have a conversation. It's okay, and it's a what do they call it? It's a not private, but anything that takes place on that phone call is confidential. Thank you.
Confidential.
Is confidential. So, ask away. This is your opportunity to learn and go away more educated.
I feel like I'm the topic of discussion a lot of times during the broker meetings. I don't know how confidential these conversations.
No, so what we like to get together and confer and discuss situations because every transaction is different. That's what the beauty of our business is. Not one transaction is the same. So yeah, we kind of know when you call in, Mike, we're going to all talk about it a little bit, but no.
They hit the record button.
We do record a lot of our calls for training purposes so that we can go back and reflect, how did we answer that? How would we tweak that answer to make it more clear? Sometimes I can go on and on. I'm a little verbose and chatty. We've already acknowledged that. And some of our other brokers are very direct, and that's a great message sometimes. Sometimes I need to be more direct, like saying, Mike, absolutely no.
No.
Like, no.
Well, the reason that these forms and these stipulations exist is because of the jackass before you. It's like if I go to Niagara Falls, there's a sign that says, don't hop in a barrel and go over the falls, because it's not only that it's common sense, but somebody tried that beforehand.
Right.
And so these things are a result of problems and issues that have taken place and mistakes made.
There are literally donkeys everywhere.
All right. Thank you, Claudia.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Great stuff. We'll leave everybody with the quote of the day. Education is not the filling of a pail, but rather the lighting of a fire. Go out and sell a home.
Yeet.